Alara sat in the VIP room of the nail salon, but the technician wore an awkward expression. "Ma'am, your membership card has insufficient funds." Alara froze. Just last month, her husband Ethan had given it to her, saying he'd loaded it with $3,000. This was her first time using it. After checking the computer, the technician said, "Miss Alara, there was a charge of $2,800 last Thursday afternoon." Last Thursday, $2,800. Alara's fingers paused. "I was at the office that day," the technician stammered. "Yes, it was Mr. Ethan who brought a lady here. Before leaving, the lady said to give $2,600 of it as a tip to one of our staff." Alara's heart began to pound, a buzzing sound filling her ears. Last Thursday, Ethan had distinctly told her he was meeting a client. He didn't come home until 8 and even complained about how difficult the client was. She remembered ending her own meeting early just to make him a hangover soup. "Pull up the security footage," she said, her voice barely a whisper as her heart sank. On the screen, Ethan walked in with his arm around a girl in a light blue dress. The girl looked up and said something to him, and Ethan smiled, gently ruffling her hair. Alara was stunned. The intimate gesture made them look like a young couple. If Ethan wasn't her husband. Suddenly, on the screen, Ethan, at the nail technician's direction, knelt on one knee and personally painted the girl's toenails. After finishing, he even lifted her foot with a doting look and kissed it. The blood in Alara's veins turned to ice. Ethan had humbled himself to paint someone else's nails. That night, he had come home and kissed her with the same mouth that had kissed another woman's foot. Alara felt an uncontrollable urge to retch. The video continued. Ethan stayed by the girl's side the entire time. As they left, he naturally took her white handbag. Alara stared at the screen. That bag was identical to one in her closet. A gift Ethan had brought back for her from a business trip last week. Apparently, she wasn't the only recipient. "Send the video to my email." Alara stood up, her legs weak. She grabbed her bag and rushed out. Back at their villa, she stormed into the study. Her fingers trembled as she dialed a private investigator. "I need to know all of Ethan's recent movements." 3 hours later, a dozen photos arrived in her inbox. Ethan and the girl, Chloe, were grocery shopping. They were holding hands in a movie theater. The most glaring photo was of a marriage certificate. The date showed they had been married for over a year. Alara couldn't stop shaking. She remembered Ethan kneeling before her at their wedding, vowing, "Alara, I will never betray you in this life." His lifetime had been so short. Her phone buzzed again. A supplementary message from the investigator. "Chloe, 24, an international high school teacher. The marriage certificate is a fake Ethan paid $30 for. Ethan goes to her apartment every Wednesday and Friday afternoon." She shakily dialed her father. "Dad, about that renewable energy project with Ethan's company. If we were to pull our investment, what's wrong?" Her father's voice turned grave. "Did Ethan hurt you?" That question broke her. At her wedding, her father, with tears in his eyes, had placed her hand in Ethan's. "If you dare let my daughter suffer, I'll make sure you can't survive in the business world." A lump formed in Alara's throat. She suddenly remembered last year when she had pneumonia with a high fever. Ethan had carried her to the emergency room in the middle of the night and knelt by her bedside for 3 days straight. How could the man whose eyes had turned red with worry for her be married to someone else? "It's nothing for now," she said, biting the back of her hand so hard she didn't cry out. "Wait for my word." After hanging up, she heard the garage door open. Ethan walked in, holding a file folder, his face wearing its usual gentle expression. "You're home early today." "Yes, I went to get my nails done," Alara said, holding out her hands. "With the membership card you gave me." Ethan's body tensed for a split second before he relaxed, but Alara saw it clearly. "By the way," she asked, feigning nonchalance, "the technician mentioned you brought a girl there last Thursday." Ethan's expression flickered. He carefully watched Alara's face. Seeing her expression was normal, he broke into a warm smile. "Oh, that was our neighbor Mrs. Miller's daughter. She wanted to get her nails done but was scared to go alone, so I recommended your usual place." He walked over and hugged her. "You must be hungry. I'll go make dinner." Alara watched his back as he walked to the kitchen, a bitter taste in her mouth. If she hadn't found out, would he have planned to treat her like a fool forever? She picked up her phone and sent a text to her father. "Pull the funding next week. I want a divorce." After sending it, she looked up at the kitchen. Ethan was chopping vegetables with practiced ease. He must have honed those cooking skills in that girl's apartment over the past year. Alara stood up, took off her wedding ring, placed it on the coffee table, and walked to the bedroom. Alara lay in bed, staring at the ceiling lamp. The light was soft. Ethan had chosen it specifically, saying it wouldn't strain her eyes. She rolled over, burying her face in the pillow. The scent of their familiar laundry detergent filled her senses. Ethan had switched to it, saying this brand was gentle and wouldn't irritate her skin. She closed her eyes, but the security footage replayed in her mind. Ethan with his arm around that girl in the light blue dress, smiling down at her, gently ruffling her hair. Alara knew that smile all too well. 3 years ago, when Ethan first met her, he had smiled just like that. Back then, he was the recently acknowledged illegitimate son of the Evans family, ignored at a party, yet he had mustered the courage to approach her, his ears bright red, and ask, "Miss Alara, may I have this dance?" She had ignored him, but he didn't give up. He waited outside her office every day with a homemade lunch, even if she wouldn't give it a second glance. After 3 months, she finally agreed to a date, and he was as happy as a child. He stood downstairs all night, just to be on time to pick her up the next morning. On their wedding day, he knelt on the red carpet, holding her hand. "Alara, I will never fail you in this life." She had believed him. For 3 years of marriage, he had treated her impeccably. When she lost her temper, he coaxed her. Whatever she wanted, he gave her. If she craved a cake from the other side of the city in the middle of the night, he would drive across town to get it. She thought he truly loved her. But now, the door opened gently. Ethan came in, still smelling of the kitchen. He sat on the edge of the bed, reaching out to touch her face. "Alara, dinner's ready." Alara flinched away from his hand and said nothing. Ethan's brow furrowed. "What's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" She shook her head. "Your eyes are red," he said, his voice instantly tense. "Is it a headache? Should we go to the hospital?" He was still like that, worrying over the smallest things. Alara looked at his anxious expression, a sharp pain piercing her heart. Was his concern real, or just an act? "It's nothing," she finally said. "I'm hungry." Ethan sighed in relief, smiling as he pinched her cheek. "My little glutton, let's go eat." The dining table was laden with sweet and sour ribs, braised fish, and honey, glazed lotus root. The sweet, cloying aroma wafted over, and Alara's heart sank. She never ate sweet dishes. Ethan knew that. She looked up, staring straight at him. "Why is everything sweet?" Ethan's hand, which was scooping rice, paused. He then smiled. "I thought you've been tired from work, and sweets might cheer you up." Alara stared at him, silent. Ethan's expression slowly stiffened. He put down the bowl, his tone a little frantic. I can make something else." "Okay," she nodded. He immediately stood up to go to the kitchen, but his phone rang. He glanced down, a panicked look on his face. "It's an emergency at work. I have to go," he said, grabbing his jacket. "Just eat something for now. I'll cook for you when I get back." Alara put down her chopsticks. "I want to eat what you cooked today." Ethan stopped, his frown deepening. "Can you stop being so difficult for once?" "What's the difference?" The words hung in the air, and even he seemed stunned to have said them. Alara stared at him, her heart feeling like it was being squeezed. Ethan immediately softened his tone. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. It's just a real emergency. I'll be back soon." He left without looking back. The soft click of the closing door felt like a slap across Alara's face. In all their years of marriage, he had never spoken to her like that. She sat at the table, looking at the spread of sweet dishes, the kind of food that girl liked. She stood up and went to the kitchen. Chopped vegetables were still on the cutting board, and the water in a pot was about to boil dry. She turned off the stove, grabbed her car keys, and followed him. It started to rain. She followed Ethan's car to an unfamiliar apartment building. The elevator stopped on the 12th floor. As she stepped out, she heard a delicate voice. "Honey, you're finally here." "Silly girl." Ethan's voice was as gentle as ever. "Have you been eating properly?" "I can't eat when you're not here," the girl said, her voice choked with tears. "But I'm here now, aren't I?" Ethan soothed. "You have to eat, even if you don't want to. The baby needs it. Be good." "Okay." The key slipped from Alara's hand, clattering on the floor with a sharp ring. Ethan whipped around. Seeing Alara, his face went deathly pale. "Alara, what are you doing here?" Alara turned and walked away. Chloe was pregnant. She sat in her car, her vision blurred by a mix of rain and tears. She saw Ethan in the rearview mirror, chasing after her, his mouth moving as if calling her name, but she didn't want to hear a single word. Rain hammered against the car window. He pounded on her door, his voice cutting through the storm. "Alara, let me explain." Alara sat in the driver's seat, tapping her fingers on the steering wheel, and looked at the two pathetic figures outside. She found it almost laughable. She slowly lowered the window, and Ethan's voice rushed in. When did you get here? Just now, she sneered. Ethan's face changed, and he spoke rapidly. She's that neighbor's sister. Her power went out today, so I just came to check on her. Alara didn't want to hear any more and reached for the window button. Sister, Chloe suddenly ran out, blocking the car. The rain soaked her white dress, making it cling to her body, a picture of pitiable beauty. It's all my fault. There's nothing going on between us. Please don't be mad at Ethan. Alara frowned, started the car, and turned the wheel to go around her. Thud, with a dull sound, Chloe lunged at the front of the car, was knocked back, and fell onto the wet ground. Alara slammed on the brakes, her heart nearly stopping. Chloe. Ethan rushed over and helped Chloe up, then turned to Alara with naked fury in his eyes. I'm fine, Chloe said weakly, her face pale. Ethan, hurry and go comfort your sister. I've comforted her for years. Ethan suddenly roared, in her eyes. I'm nothing but a dog. You're hurt like this, and you're still thinking about her. Why are you so kind? Alara froze in the driver's seat, her fingers tightening unconsciously. She had never heard Ethan speak with such a tone. Sharp, disgusted, as if the mask had finally been ripped away. She threw herself at the car. Alara said after a moment of silence. Enough. Ethan cut her off. It's one thing to misunderstand me, but now you're slandering her. Do you have any idea she's pregnant? Every word was a knife stabbing into Alara's heart. Is it yours? She asked. Ethan's expression froze, as if he finally realized what he'd said. His lips moved. Alara, don't talk nonsense. Ah. Chloe suddenly cried out in pain and collapsed. Chloe. Ethan panicked, yanking open the car door. Let me borrow the car. I have to get her to the hospital. Alara sat in the passenger seat, watching Ethan's trembling fingers grip the steering wheel. In the back, Chloe lay unconscious, though her eyelashes fluttered. You're so nervous about her. Could the baby really be yours? Alara asked softly. Ethan slammed on the accelerator, his voice tight. This is life and death. Can you please not cause trouble right now? Alara turned to look out the window. She knew this road too well. 3 months ago, she had acute gastroenteritis, and Ethan had sped just like this to get her to the hospital. That day, he was in such a panic he had put his shoes on the wrong feet, muttering, "Don't be scared, Alara," the whole way. "You've really outdone yourself, Ethan," Alara said, leaning her head wearily against the window. Ethan honked loudly and overtook a car. "We'll talk about it at home." At the hospital, the moment the car stopped, Ethan jumped out, scooped Chloe into his arms, and ran inside. Alara stood silently beside the car, watching his frantic figure. He looked just like he did years ago, when he had run with her in his arms during her high fever. "Move," Ethan yelled, his elbow bumping Alara's shoulder. Caught off guard, she fell onto the wet pavement, scraping her palm on the rough ground. When she looked up, she only saw Ethan's back disappearing into the emergency room with Chloe. A nurse hurried over to help her up. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Alara shook her head and used the wall to pull herself up. Her knee stung, but it was nothing compared to the gaping hole in her heart. From the emergency room, she could hear Ethan's tearful voice. "Doctor, how is she? Is the baby okay?" The nurse handed her a tissue, and only then did Alara realize she was crying. She took the tissue but couldn't wipe away the endless stream of tears. "So this is what it felt like when your heart died. Your body still felt the pain." The emergency room door opened, and Ethan rushed out. He froze when he saw her. He opened his mouth, his gaze falling on her bleeding palm. "Go home first. I'll give you an explanation." Alara nodded silently, but as she turned, the world spun, and she collapsed. When Alara opened her eyes, the glaring white light made her instinctively raise a hand to shield them. "Alara." Ethan's face appeared in her line of sight, his eyes shining with joyful surprise. "You're pregnant." She was stunned, her fingers unconsciously moving to her flat stomach. Her period was late, but she had never imagined. "Alara, it's all my fault." Ethan sat by the bed, carefully taking her hand, his voice gentle. "You misunderstood. Chloe's baby is from her deadbeat ex-boyfriend. I was just helping her because she was all alone." Alara pulled her hand back and let out a cold laugh. Saying nothing, Ethan sighed and stood up. "You get some rest. I'll go buy you something to eat." He turned and left, his footsteps fading away. Alara stared at the closed door, her hand resting on her abdomen. A peal of laughter suddenly came from the next room. It was Chloe's delicate voice. Then came Ethan's deep voice, filled with the familiar tenderness she knew so well. Alara picked up her phone and dialed her bodyguard. "Bring me the divorce agreement from the drawer in my study." Half an hour later, the bodyguard appeared silently in her room and handed her a file folder. Alara opened the agreement, her finger hesitating over the signature line. She knew the current Ethan wouldn't sign it easily. The door was suddenly pushed open, and she quickly hid the papers. Ethan walked in, beaming. Elara, I've already apologized to Chloe on your behalf. She forgives you. Elara looked up, her eyes icy. Why would I need her forgiveness? The smile on Ethan's face froze for a second before he resumed his gentle expression. To make it up to you, I bought tickets to a play. The three of us can go tonight. How about it? Elara stared at him for a few seconds, then suddenly curved her lips into a smile. All right. At the theater, Chloe, in a white dress, followed Ethan obediently, occasionally stealing glances at Elara, her eyes tinged with triumph. Elara stood at the entrance, her heart lurching as she saw the empty auditorium. Mister, Ethan booked the entire theater, saying he was afraid a crowd might be too much for you, the manager said obsequiously, leading the way. See, it's the same spot you always liked, the center seats in the front row, exactly the same as 7 years ago. Back then, Ethan was just an insignificant employee at the Evans Company. He had saved for 3 months just to afford 2 tickets. Throughout the entire performance, his eyes had never left her face. Chloe can sit with us, Ethan said, nodding. Chloe stood in a corner, twisting the hem of her dress. I'm just going to the restroom. Her eyes were red, as if she had suffered a great injustice. Ethan, unfazed, led Elara to their seats. Do you remember the first time we saw a play? You were. I remember. Elara interrupted. You said you'd watch plays with me for a lifetime. Ethan's smile faltered for a moment. Then he laughed. Of course, when the baby is born, your dad and I will accompany our princess to plays. For a lifetime. The stage lights came on, and the actors began their performance. At first, Ethan held her hand, but within 10 minutes, his fingers started tapping restlessly on the armrest. Why isn't Chloe back yet? He said, checking his watch for the 3rd time. I'll go check on her. Elara sat alone in the empty theater. The actors' lines floated around her, but she couldn't register a single word. She stood up and followed him. The corridor to the restrooms was dimly lit. Elara stood around a corner and heard soft panting sounds coming from inside. What's on stage is for her. Ethan's voice was laced with a smile. Right now, I'm only performing for you. Chloe giggled through her tears. Then can you act like a little bunny? All right. Ethan's tone was gentle. Look. Like this. Boing, boing. Elara clenched her fists tightly. 3 years ago, when she was crying at the office over a work mistake, Ethan had acted like a bunny just like that to cheer her up. He had said that bunny was only for her. She didn't make a sound. Walking back to her seat step by step, Ethan and Chloe returned one after the other, carrying the same scent. What took so long? She asked without turning her head. Chloe wasn't feeling well, so I stayed with her for a bit, Ethan said, sitting down naturally, though his right hand crept towards Chloe's side. From the corner of her eye, Elara saw their fingers intertwine in the shadows of the seats, only to hastily separate when she turned her head. Elara. Ethan leaned in to kiss her. She turned her head away and pulled the divorce agreement from her bag. You promised. Sign it. In the dim light, Ethan's expression froze. His eyes scanned the paper, his Adam's apple bobbing. What's this? A guarantee, Elara said calmly, just like the old ones. Ethan's shoulders visibly relaxed, a doting smile appearing on his face. Oh, you. He took out his pen and signed his name with a flourish. You're about to be a mother, and you're still so childish. Elara looked at the familiar signature, remembering how, over the years, Ethan had signed every guarantee she had written on a whim. I guarantee to only love Elara forever. I guarantee to say good morning and good night every day. I guarantee not to have dinner alone with another woman. Back then, he would sign them while laughing at her childishness, then pull her into his arms and say, I'm yours for life. I'll sign as many guarantees as you want. Now, he had signed without even reading what it was. There, Ethan handed the papers back to her, pinching her cheek. When have I ever gone back on a promise to you? On stage, the lead actress was screaming tearfully. You have no idea what you've lost. Elara let out a small laugh and put the document back in her bag. After the play, Ethan and Chloe were long gone. Elara felt a sourness in her heart as she took a taxi home, her face expressionless. Back home, Elara began packing. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her father. The divestment procedures are complete. It will take effect in 3 days. I'll send someone to pick you up then, she replied within. Okay, and continued folding clothes into her suitcase. Ethan didn't come home that night. He only sent a single text. Something came up. Go to sleep early. The next morning, just as Elara had finished getting ready, the bedroom door was thrown open. Ethan rushed in, his eyes bloodshot, and grabbed her wrist. "Come with me." "What are you doing?" Allara stumbled as he dragged her. Ethan didn't speak, roughly shoving her into the car. He drove recklessly, running several red lights. Allara recognized they were heading towards Chloe's school. A crowd had gathered at the school gate. Chloe was sitting on the ground, her clothes dirty, tears streaming down her face. When she saw them, she immediately scrambled up and knelt before Allara. "Sister Allara, I really didn't seduce Ethan. Please let me go." "Allara, what else do you have to say for yourself?" Ethan's voice was filled with anger. "I didn't do anything," Allara said, shaking his hand off. Ethan sneered and pulled over a small boy with glasses. "You tell us, who told you to do it?" The boy glanced timidly at Allara. It was this lady. She gave us money to throw ink on MS. "Chloe, you're lying." Allara trembled with rage. "I don't even know you." "That's enough," Ethan shouted. "Apologize to Chloe." Allara shook her head. "Why should I apologize for something I didn't do?" Ethan's face was cold. He dragged Allara to the school's sports field. Under the blazing sun, Chloe stumbled after them, her dress covered in dust, her knees bruised. Chloe began to sob. "Ethan, it's all my fault." Her legs gave way as if to kneel again, but Ethan caught her, his eyes fixed on Chloe's bruised knees, and his fingers tightened. "Allara, do you know she's pregnant? You should get a taste of this too. You dare." Alara's voice rose. "My father won't let you get away with this. Such a princess." Ethan suddenly exploded, grabbing her by the collar. "You think you can do whatever you want just because you have your family to back you up." He turned to his bodyguards and roared, "Hold her down." Two bodyguards immediately seized Alara's shoulders. She struggled violently. "Ethan, there are security cameras everywhere." Ethan sneered. "They've been turned off for a while." He leaned in and whispered in her ear, "You hurt Chloe, so don't blame me." Chloe made a show of stopping him. "Ethan, don't do this." "Chloe, stay out of it," he said gently, pushing her away before turning his harsh gaze back. "Force her down." The bodyguards applied pressure. Alara's knee slammed into the ground, the pain making her vision go black. She bit her lip so hard it bled to keep from crying out. "Now it's fair. 1 hour," Ethan told the bodyguards. "Watch her. Chloe is weak, so I'll help her back to the car. Just consider this penance for our child." Forced to kneel, Allara felt a sharp pain in her lower abdomen, and a cold sweat instantly soaked her back. "Ethan," she called out weakly, "my stomach hurts." Ethan glanced back, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Chloe sagged in his arms. "Pregnancy makes one a bit delicate. My sister isn't like me." Ethan's expression immediately hardened. "She treats you like this, and you still defend her. I have to get justice for you today." He turned and got into the car. Allara watched through the car window as Ethan gently placed his hand on Chloe's stomach. Her vision grew blurry, and then everything went black. Allara awoke to the sharp smell of antiseptic. A dull ache throbbed in her lower abdomen. She instinctively reached for her stomach, her fingertips brushing against a cold needle. "You're awake." Ethan's voice came from her right. She turned her head and saw him sitting by the bed. He leaned in as if to touch her stomach but stopped halfway. "Have you learned your lesson?" he asked. Allara closed her eyes. Seeing she wouldn't answer, Ethan reached out and caressed her face. "If you were always this obedient, it would be so much better." His thumb brushed over her chapped lips, his voice gentle. "You wouldn't have had to suffer, forcing your pregnant wife to kneel for a neighbor's sister," Allara said, turning her head away from his touch. "Do you think that's reasonable?" Ethan's hand froze mid-air, his brow furrowing. "I only care about right and wrong, not feelings. I need to rest," Allara said, pulling the blanket up. "Please leave." Ethan's expression clearly faltered. He stared at her for a few seconds, then glanced at his phone. "There's an emergency at the office. I'll be back later." He walked to the door, then suddenly turned back. "What check-up are you having tomorrow? I overheard you talking to the doctor." "A routine prenatal check-up," Allara said, surprised. Ethan's gaze scanned her face, then he turned back, grabbing her phone from the nightstand. "Password, my birthday," Allara said with a cold smile. "Do you remember it?" Ethan entered it incorrectly twice before getting it right on the third try. He quickly scrolled through her call history, and seeing nothing unusual, tossed the phone back on the bed. "Chloe is in the room next door. Don't bother her unless you have to." When she didn't reply, he suddenly laughed. "You jealous little thing. She really is just a neighbor's sister." Allara gave a sarcastic smile and nodded. After the door closed, Allara immediately pressed the call button for a doctor. "Is the abortion procedure confirmed for 9 tomorrow morning?" the doctor asked, flipping through her chart. "Yes." Alara's voice was soft. "He doesn't need to know." Just as the doctor left, the door was thrown open. Chloe, in a hospital gown, rushed in, limping, her eyes shining with a frightening light. "You're going to abort Ethan's child." Alara slowly sat up. Chloe looked anything but weak now. "If you know what's good for you, get the abortion and the divorce," Chloe said, gripping the bed rail. "Otherwise, when Ethan dumps you, you won't get a single penny." Alara suddenly smiled. "Did Ethan not tell you who's keeping his company afloat?" "Don't talk nonsense." Chloe's voice was shrill. "Ethan told me himself he never loved you. He only married you for your family's connections. If it weren't for that project, he would have." Slap. The sound of the slap was crisp and loud. Chloe's head snapped to the side, a red mark immediately appearing on her cheek. "That was for being a homewrecker," Alara said, shaking her stinging hand. Slap. The second one was harder, making Chloe stagger. "And that was for framing me." Chloe held her face and took a few steps back, fury in her eyes, but then she caught a glimpse of a figure walking down the hall, and her expression instantly changed to one of victimhood. She screamed, slammed herself against the wall, and then crumpled to the floor. The door was thrown open. Ethan rushed in, car keys still in hand. He stared at the collapsed Chloe, then turned to the bed in a rage. "Alara, if anything happens to Chloe, I'll hold you responsible. Why don't you ask her what she said first?" Alara said calmly. Ethan was already lifting Chloe. He sneered, "She's a patient. What could she possibly say?" His eyes fell on Alara's reddened palm. "You, on the other hand, really don't hold back." Medical staff rushed in, carefully lifting Chloe onto a gurney. As Ethan followed them out, he suddenly turned back at the door. "Someone, watch her." His eyes were dark. "If anything happens to Chloe and the baby, you'll pay." Alara watched them disappear around the corner and slowly lay back down. She picked up her phone. The lock screen was a photo from her wedding with Ethan. In the picture, Ethan's smile was so genuine, his eyes filled with love as he looked at her. Now, for another woman, he was threatening her. Her finger hovered over her father's number, but she ultimately put the phone down. Footsteps approached from outside. 2 bodyguards in black suits stood outside the glass window, their gazes cold. Alara slowly curled into a ball, her forehead pressed against her knees. Waves of pain washed over her abdomen, but worse than that was the feeling of being torn apart from the inside. 5 years of marriage, and in the end, it was all for nothing. Alara was roughly shaken awake from her sleep. She opened her eyes to see Ethan's grim face, his eyes devoid of any warmth. "Chloe lost a lot of blood and needs a transfusion," he said in a low voice. "You have the same blood type. Go now." Alara was stunned, then shook her head. "I'm already anemic. Another transfusion could be dangerous for me." Ethan sneered. "Did you think about the consequences when you hurt her?" Her eyes widened in disbelief. "I hurt her. Don't play dumb," Ethan said impatiently, waving his hand. 2 bodyguards immediately moved forward, grabbing her by each arm. "After you donate the blood, we'll consider this matter settled." Alara struggled, but she was no match for the 2 strong men. She was dragged from the bed and stumbled towards the transfusion room. The hallway lights were blinding. Her vision blurred for a moment, and she vaguely remembered the early days of their marriage. She had felt dizzy from anemia, and Ethan had stayed up all night to cook her porridge, feeding it to her spoonful by spoonful, his eyes full of concern. "Alara, if you ever feel unwell again, you have to tell me," he had said so gently back then. "I can't bear to see you suffer at all." Now, he watched coldly as she was forced into a chair. The needle pierced her vein, and her crimson blood flowed through the tube into a bag. Her face grew paler, her lips lost their color, and her fingertips turned cold. The doctor frowned and whispered to Ethan, "Sir, your wife is too weak. If we continue, it could be dangerous." Ethan stared at Alara's pale face, his brow furrowed, seeming to hesitate for a moment, but then his expression hardened. "Continue." Alara closed her eyes, her heart feeling like it was being squeezed in a vice. So, he really didn't care if she lived or died. After the donation, Alara could barely stand, her vision darkening. Ethan saw her swaying and reached out to steady her, his tone softening slightly. "You look terrible." She didn't speak, simply pushing his hand away and using the wall to slowly make her way forward. Ethan frowned, following her. "I've had someone make you some porridge. You should have some later." Alara stopped and looked back at him, her eyes full of irony. "What? Are you afraid I'll die and there'll be no one left to give Chloe blood?" Ethan's face darkened. Before he could speak, a doctor rushed over. "Sir, Ms. Chloe is hemorrhaging again. The blood we took isn't enough." Alara's pupils contracted, and she instinctively backed away. "No, I can't give any more." Ethan looked at her ashen face, a flicker of conflict in his eyes. But he quickly hardened his resolve and told the doctor, "Continue drawing blood." A chill ran through Alara's body, as if she had been plunged into ice. She looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Ethan, I'll die." He looked away, avoiding her gaze. "You won't." After the second blood draw, Alara was nearly unconscious. She slumped in the chair, her breathing shallow, her vision fading in and out. Looking at her colorless face, Ethan finally showed a hint of panic and reached out to hold her. "Alara." She shoved him away violently, using the wall to support herself as she walked, step by painstaking step, back to her room. Ethan looked up at her. Her back was so frail it looked like she could collapse at any moment, but she never once looked back. Ethan stood frozen, watching her leave, an inexplicable sense of unease creeping into his heart. A doctor spoke beside him. "Sir, Ms. Chloe's condition has stabilized." He snapped back to reality, nodded, and in the end, did not follow her. Alara lay in her hospital bed, her body icy cold. The porridge Ethan had sent was still on the nightstand, its warmth long gone. She tried to pick it up for a sip, but her fingers trembled so much she couldn't even hold the spoon. The pain in her abdomen grew more intense, like a knife twisting inside her. She gritted her teeth. "Doctor," she called out weakly. A doctor entered and, seeing her ghastly pale face, immediately lifted the blanket to check on her. His expression changed drastically. The bedsheet was soaked in blood. Anemia combined with severe blood loss can be life-threatening, especially after you were forced to donate so much. The doctor's voice was tight. "You need surgery immediately, or your life will be in danger." Alara closed her eyes and nodded. "Okay." She paused, then added in a low voice, "Don't let Ethan know." Lying on the cold operating table, her consciousness fading, Alara felt as if she had gone back 5 years. When they first met, Ethan stood waiting for her in the rain, his eyes full of a gentle smile. At their wedding, he held her hand and said, "Alara, I will be good to you for the rest of my life." But he had changed. He complained she was too bossy, not gentle enough, always acting superior. She thought she wasn't good enough, so she tried desperately to be more obedient, more submissive. Only now did she understand. It wasn't that she wasn't good enough, it was that he had never truly loved her. The anesthesia began to take effect. As cold instruments touched her body, she closed her eyes, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. The baby was gone, and their 5 years of marriage were well and truly over. After the surgery, Alara was wheeled back to her room. A nurse tucked her in. "Ma'am, please get some rest." Alara asked weakly, "Did Ethan come by?" The nurse hesitated, then shook her head. "No." She managed a faint smile. She had expected as much. She struggled to sit up and went to the window. In the garden below, Ethan was helping Chloe take a slow walk. Chloe's cheeks were rosy as she leaned coquettishly on his shoulder. He looked down at her, his eyes filled with tenderness. Alara watched them quietly, her heart feeling like it was being sliced open, piece by piece. Once, he had cared for her with that same meticulous attention. She turned, took the signed divorce agreement from her bag, and placed it gently on the hospital bed. Then, she walked away without a backward glance. At the end of the hall, the men her father had sent were waiting. "Miss, the car is downstairs." Alara took one last look back at Ethan helping Chloe up the stairs. She stepped into the elevator and never looked back. The hospital elevator doors slowly closed. Ethan helped Chloe emerge from the stairwell. Chloe leaned her entire body against him. "Ethan, I can't walk anymore," she said, slumping into his arms. Ethan frowned, his arm stiffly supporting her. "Just a little further, we're almost at your room." He glanced towards the elevators, and his heart felt a sudden prick. "What's wrong?" Chloe asked, looking up at him. "Nothing," Ethan said, retracting his gaze. "You get some rest. I have an important meeting this afternoon." Chloe bit her lip. "When will you come see me again?" "Right after the meeting," Ethan said, pushing her room door open and helping her lie down. "Be good, and don't call me all the time." "I know." Chloe nodded obediently, but her fingers secretly tightened on the bedsheet. "By the way, it was Sister Alara who gave me blood yesterday." "Right. Should I go thank her?" Ethan, about to leave, paused. "Yes. Don't let our relationship slip." "I understand," Chloe said with a sweet smile. Ethan checked his watch, his frown deepening. "I have to go. The project team is waiting." As he turned, he didn't see the dark expression that instantly fell over Chloe's face. In the conference room, Ethan loosened his tie and pushed the proposal in front of the representative from Alara's family company. "Director Miller, we've been preparing this renewable energy plan for 3 months. No rush, Mr. Ethan," Director Miller said, slowly flipping through the document. "Is Ms. Alara not here today. Ethan tapped his fingers on the table. She's not feeling well. Just then, his phone began to vibrate violently. The caller ID, Chloe, made his expression darken. Excuse me, Ethan said, declining the call and continuing to explain the technical parameters. Less than 3 minutes later, the phone started vibrating again. He remembered telling Chloe to check on Alara, and his heart clenched. Could something have happened to Alara? I need to take an urgent call, Ethan said, striding out of the conference room. Chloe, sobbing, came from the other end. Ethan, my stomach hurts so much. Please come back. Call a doctor. Ethan hissed. I don't want a doctor. I'm scared. Chloe cried even harder. I won't get a check up if you're not here. Ethan glanced back at the board members murmuring inside the glass-walled room and gritted his teeth. I'm on my way. The black Mercedes sped through the city. When Ethan burst into the hospital room, Chloe was propped up in bed watching TV, a bag of chips in her hand. Ethan, she said, delighted, tossing the snack aside and showing off to the nurse changing her for drip. See, I told you my husband would be here in 18 minutes. Ethan stood at the door, his chest heaving. You're fine. Chloe flinched at his roar. I just missed you. Do you have any idea what kind of meeting I was in? Ethan slammed the door. The renewable energy project is a matter of life and death for the company. So what? Is the company more important than me? Chloe retorted, her chin held high. The nurse stood by, not daring to speak. Ethan was suddenly at a loss for words. He remembered something and turned to leave, muttering, I'll find Alara. She'll know what to do. The nurse nearby suddenly spoke up. Miss, Alara was discharged this morning. Didn't you know, sir? What? Ethan whipped around, his face a mask of shock. Yes, she completed the discharge process this morning, right around the time you two came back. Didn't you run into her at the elevator? Ethan remembered the elevator door closing in front of him that morning, remembered her walking away without a backward glance after giving blood. The terrible feeling in his gut grew stronger. Just as Ethan was about to go to the next room, his phone began to vibrate manically. Messages from the company group chat exploded on his screen. Alara's family company just pulled all funding. Boss, get back here now. All our partners are pulling out. Chloe ran over barefoot. Ethan, what's wrong? She leaned in to see his phone but was shoved away. Are you satisfied now? Ethan's eyes were red. Her family pulled their investment. Chloe froze. She suddenly remembered the woman on the hospital bed asking disdainfully, have you ever wondered who's keeping his company afloat? She looked at Ethan's dark face and suddenly felt a chill of fear. Ethan kicked open the door to Alara's room. The bed was empty, the hospital gown neatly folded. A piece of paper lay on the nightstand. Ethan's hand trembled. His fingers touched the paper and immediately recoiled as if burned. The bold black words, divorce agreement, seared his eyes. The signature at the bottom made him freeze. This is impossible. Ethan snatched the paper, his body stiffening as he unfolded it. His name was signed at the bottom. He remembered the theater. The paper Alara had handed him. He remembered secretly holding Chloe's hand while sitting next to Alara. Then seeing Alara look away, he had panicked. Assuming it was another one of her silly guarantee notes, he had signed it without even looking, smiling and kissing her forehead. When have I ever not done what I promised you? A storm of emotions churned within Ethan. She knew. She must have found out about his affair. Ethan. Chloe peeked around the doorframe. Her eyes lit up when she saw the divorce agreement. She finally came to her senses. She ran in and took his arm. We can get married tomorrow. Get off me. Ethan threw her off. When did I ever say I was going to marry you? Chloe staggered, the smile frozen on her face. She's the one who initiated it. Besides, she said, touching her stomach with a shy smile, you wouldn't want our child to be illegitimate, would you? Ethan suddenly clung to that as if it were a lifeline. Right. The baby. Alara is still pregnant. She wouldn't divorce me. She must be jealous. This must be her way of getting him to grovel. Yes, that had to be it. He fumbled for his phone to call Alara, but Chloe's next words rooted him to the spot. She never planned on having the baby, Chloe said with a pout. I overheard her in the hallway, talking to a doctor about an abortion. His collar was suddenly seized as Ethan slammed her against the wall. Say that again. It was that day, Chloe said, terrified by the bloodshot look in his eyes. I went to see her to try and convince her to make up with you, but she suddenly hit me. Ethan let go and stumbled back, hitting the bed. A wire in his brain snapped. He remembered Alara's pale face, the nurse's hesitant expression, her lone figure walking away that night. You knew. Ethan's voice was hoarse, as if all his strength had been drained. Why didn't you tell me? Chloe cowered against the wall. I thought you didn't want that baby. His phone started vibrating again. Dozens of messages from his assistant. Official notice of divestment from the family. Bank accounts have been frozen. Shareholders are demanding an emergency meeting. Clinging to one last hope, Ethan dialed Alara's number, only to be met with a cold, automated voice telling him the number was off. He then called his father-in-law, speaking urgently the moment the call connected. Dad, Alara's just upset. Don't take it seriously. The project. Choose your words carefully, Mr. Ethan, Alara's father said, his voice like ice. My daughter became a single woman this morning. Your project has nothing to do with our family anymore. Impossible. Allara wouldn't. Ethan suddenly ran to the nurse's station. You must be lying to me. Pull up the surgical records for room 609. The head nurse was frightened by his crazed expression. Mr. Ethan. Patient privacy. I'm her husband. Ethan slammed his fist on the counter. The computer screen lit up. On the DC surgical consent form, next to Alara's signature, the reason for the surgery was written in bold. Threatened miscarriage caused by blood transfusion. The date was from the day before. The blood he had forced her to give had killed their child. Ethan slid down the wall, collapsing onto the floor. Chloe tried to help him up but was shoved away. Go. All of you. Just go. He pulled the crumpled divorce agreement from his pocket and suddenly noticed a small line of text on the back. Ethan, you make me sick. Chloe crouched down to take Ethan's hand but was violently thrown off. She forced a smile. Ethan, don't be like this. The baby in my belly is yours too. What do you know? Ethan suddenly shot up, his eyes red with fury. Alara's family holds 40% of the company's shares. All our bank loans were secured with her assets. Chloe's face turned white. What does that mean? Without Allara, I am nothing. As Ethan yelled the words, he himself was stunned. He remembered the year he first got the investment. He was drunk at the celebration dinner. As Allara shielded him from more drinks, a business partner joked, Mr. Ethan is a lucky man. Marrying Miss Allara saved you at least 20 years of struggle. He saw her face fall. She had announced to everyone that he had earned the investment on his own merit. That night, he came home and threw up violently. She gently wiped the tears from his face with a warm towel. Allara, I will never let you down. Ethan suddenly started to laugh, a choked sound that brought tears to his eyes. He remembered his first visit to her family's estate. Her father had slammed a teacup on the table. My daughter has used pure silver cutlery since she was a child. You expect her to use stainless steel. Allara had immediately stood up, defying her father for the first time. I'm marrying a man, not cutlery. On the car ride back, he had secretly vowed to work even harder. When did it all start to change? Was it when he secured an investment with no effort, and people around him sneered that he was living off his wife? He wanted to argue but had nothing to say. Was it when Allara took him to an auction to network, and he mocked her, Princess Disease, saying deals could be made just as easily over drinks? Was it when he met her father and she insisted he change his suit, and he snapped that her family was just ridiculously picky? His insecurity festered. He began to feel that Allara always carried an air of superiority. He had to grovel to her for investments. He had to endure her shopping trips to designer stores. He had to pretend to be the perfect husband in front of everyone. Until he met Chloe. From their first meeting, she was full of admiration for him. Everything he did was met with "You're amazing," and worshipful eyes. He had drowned in her adoration, but he had loved Allara at the beginning. He truly had. Ethan, Chloe tugged his sleeve. Say something. Ethan dazedly pulled out his wallet. Tucked inside was a photo. Allara in the kitchen last winter, making hangover soup. He had been drunk from a business dinner that night, and she had stayed up with him until 4 a.m. You won't leave, right? He remembered drunkenly asking her, clinging to her hand. You won't leave me like my mother did. What had Allara said then? She gently wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, I'm always here. Of course, he was the one who had betrayed her first. Ethan, Chloe screamed, slapping the photo from his hand. Look at me, that bitch is gone. You still have me. Ethan slowly looked up. The woman before him suddenly seemed like a complete stranger. This woman he had once thought was gentle and understanding now had a face contorted with jealousy. You should go back to your room and rest, Ethan said, picking up the photo. Now, Chloe's expression froze. She looked at the lost, broken man before her. She didn't want to fight with him now. All her efforts would be for nothing. She touched her stomach. This was her only chance to climb higher. She would hold on to it tightly. When Ethan pushed open the glass doors of his company, the receptionist was frantically packing things into a cardboard box. Mr. Ethan, she yelped, dropping a mug that shattered on the floor. Ethan looked at the half-empty office. Where is everyone? Director Wong said his kid has a fever, and Manager Lee had a family emergency. The receptionist's voice trailed off. The few people remaining in the conference room stood up in unison. Ethan loosened his tie. Why did her family pull the funding? Tell me the truth. The head of planning looked down. We lost to a competitor by 3 percentage points in last week's industry review. Why did no one tell me? Miss Alara always helped us revise the data, the finance director said, then abruptly stopped. Ethan slammed open a folder, sending papers scattering like snowflakes. He grabbed his company's proposal and laid it next to the competitors. The same product, but their cost. Control charts were precise to 2 decimal places, while his team's basic data didn't even add up. Everyone can go home, Ethan said, his voice raw. After the last person left, he walked slowly down the hall. The microwave in the break room still had a sticky note on it. Don't heat for more than 3 minutes. Alara. That was from last winter when he was hospitalized for a stomach ulcer. Alara had come to the office every day at noon to deliver food for the staff, just to make sure they ate on time. The head of the conference table. That's where he had thrown a cup after his first failed financing round. Alara had knelt on the floor to pick up the pieces, her finger getting cut, but she had still smiled and comforted him. It will be better next time. Ethan walked into his office. At the very bottom of a drawer was a photo. The day the company was founded, Alara, in a white shirt, had helped him put up the logo. As the picture was taken, she was on her tiptoes, adjusting his collar, her gaze tender. Alara. Ethan knelt on the floor, tears splashing onto the photograph. He understood now. The only reason that tiny office had become what it was today was because someone was always behind him, fixing his mistakes. Every time he got drunk, someone remembered to make him hangover soup. Every time a proposal had issues, someone quietly stayed up all night to redo the numbers. That person had always been Alara. Rain began to fall outside. Ethan took out his phone. The number at the top of his call log, the one he used to dial several times a day, now seemed impossible to press. He forced himself to dial it and pressed the phone to his ear. A mechanical female voice repeated coldly, "The number you have dialed is currently busy." He opened his messages and scrolled up for 3 full minutes before finding the last one from Alara. You believe her, but not me. What had he done that day? Oh, for Chloe. He had cruelly ordered his bodyguards to force her to her knees. He scrolled up again. Stomach medicine is in your pocket. He had replied with a simple K. Dad asked if you're coming home for dinner. He had replied busy. I have a 102-degree fever. He hadn't even seen the message. Ethan suddenly threw his phone against the wall, then scrambled to pick it up like a madman. He ran frantically to a convenience store, snatching the cashier's phone. Let me borrow it, just for a minute. The moment the call connected, Ethan turned on the recorder. Hello. Alara's voice came through the receiver, a little hoarse. Ethan opened his mouth, but a lump in his throat stopped him from speaking. The voice on the other end said, hello, twice more, then hung up. That'll be $3.50, the cashier said, reaching for the phone. Ethan clutched it tightly, only letting go when the cashier threatened to call the police. He stood on the curb, setting the single recorded, hello, as his ringtone, turning the volume to maximum. Hello, hello, hello. With each playback, Ethan wiped his face. The convenience store light illuminated his red-rimmed eyes. A child pointed at him. Mommy, that man is crying. Rain streamed down Ethan's face. Standing on the sidewalk, he suddenly remembered what Alara had said as he forced her to her knees. Ethan, why can't you ever believe me? The words stabbed him like a knife. Why had that little boy pointed at Alara without hesitation? Why had she insisted she didn't do it? Knowing her, if she had done something wrong, she would have admitted it. She had always been so straightforward. Ethan turned and ran back towards the hospital, his heart pounding. He had to confront Chloe and get the truth. The hospital corridor was empty. As he neared Chloe's room, he slowed down and heard her talking on the phone. Mom, don't worry, he's just having a hard time accepting it right now. Chloe's voice was smug. He'll get over it. He's wrapped around my little finger. Ethan's hand froze on the doorknob. You should have seen it. He believed it was Alara's fault just because of what that kid said. Chloe's laughter pierced Ethan's ears like needles. I just gave the kid a few pieces of candy, and he did exactly as I said. Ethan, that fool, actually made Alara kneel and apologize to me. Ethan's fists clenched so tightly his knuckles cracked, his nails digging into his palms. So Chloe had been lying. He had been wronging Alara all along. He could hear Chloe's mother on the other end, and though the words were muffled, Chloe's reply sent him into an icy abyss. Don't worry about the baby. I'll find a way to get rid of it. Then I'll just say Alara caused it. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Honestly, why did you have to make me keep evidence? Now I don't even know whose baby this is, Chloe complained. How was I supposed to know I'd get pregnant? It's your fault for making me string all of them along. A roar filled Ethan's head. He had thought Chloe was pure and kind, willing to be with him without a title for the sake of their child, but the baby wasn't even his. What had he done all this time? For a child that wasn't his. He had forced Alara to give blood and killed their real baby. Inside, Chloe was still talking. I really threw myself against that wall with all my might. I guess this baby is just tough, but it's fine. Now I'm the only woman Ethan has left. He won't abandon me. Ethan couldn't listen anymore. He kicked the door open. Chloe was so startled she dropped her phone. The call still active on the screen. Ethan, when did you get here? Since you mentioned giving a kid a few pieces of candy. Ethan's voice was glacial. Since you said you don't know whose baby it is. Chloe's face went white. She scrambled to hang up. Let me explain. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Ethan grabbed the ultrasound photo from the nightstand. Is this my child? Huh, of course it's yours. Chloe lunged to hug him. My mom was just talking nonsense. Ethan shoved her away. Then explain why you taught a child to lie. Why did you fake a miscarriage to frame Alara? Chloe's expression changed. She grabbed a fruit knife from the table and held it to her wrist. If you walk out that door, I'll kill myself. Ethan sneered and pulled out his phone. The screen showing it was recording. Chloe's hand trembled, and the knife clattered to the floor. Alara never pushed you that day. Ethan's voice shook. You threw yourself against the wall. So what? Chloe laughed hysterically. She deserved it. A rich man like you. Why should she be your wife? Ethan turned to leave. Behind him, he heard the sound of things being smashed and Chloe's hysterical sobs, but he couldn't hear any of it. His mind was filled with the image of Alara's eyes, brimming with tears she stubbornly refused to let fall. He remembered bursting into the room that day, seeing Chloe pale on the floor and Alara sitting there, her hand still raised. He hadn't even asked. He had just assumed Alara pushed her. Thinking back, the look in Alara's eyes wasn't just shock. It was something deeper. It was disappointment. It was heartbreak. He suddenly remembered their wedding day. Alara in her white gown, smiling at him. She had said, Ethan, I will always believe in you. And I hope you can always believe in me. But in the end, he had failed her. Ethan stumbled through the door of their home, fumbling for the light switch. The lights flickered on, instantly filling the living room. But no one rose from the sofa. There was no gentle, "You're home." He stood in the entryway. The house was terrifyingly quiet. Even the hum of the refrigerator was deafening. A sharp pain shot through his stomach. Ethan hunched over and shuffled to the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator. A blast of cold air hit him. Inside, several containers were neatly arranged. The sweet and sour ribs had been there for 5 days. The sauce congealed on top. Ethan's hand shook so badly he almost dropped the container. He remembered that night. Alara sitting at the table, her chopsticks hovering over the food before finally picking up a single green vegetable. Don't you like it? He had asked without looking up. It's a little sweet, Alara had said softly. You know I don't eat sweet things. Only then did he remember. He had been cooking for Chloe earlier that day and had added sugar out of habit. Chloe loved sweet food. She even added sugar to her stir-fried vegetables. And he had made Alara the exact same thing. I'll make you something else next time, he had said dismissively. Then his phone had rung. Chloe said her stomach hurt. He had dropped his chopsticks and left without a second glance. Ethan grabbed a piece of cold pork and shoved it in his mouth. The sauce was cloyingly sweet, sticking in his throat. He chewed mechanically, piece after piece, until his jaw ached. Ugh, his stomach churned. He leaned over the sink and retched violently. The man in the mirror had bloodshot eyes, sauce smeared on his lips like a clown. I'm not even human. Ethan slapped himself hard across the face. The sharp sound echoed in the empty kitchen. He staggered into the living room and collapsed onto the sofa. Alara's mint-scented hand cream was still on the coffee table. He opened it. The familiar scent made his nose sting. A note was tucked under the remote. In Alara's handwriting, stomach medicine is in the left drawer. Remember to take it after meals. Ethan frantically tore through every drawer, finally finding a pillbox in the bedroom nightstand. It was neatly organized with different pills, each compartment labeled headache, stomachache, cold. The last one said before socializing. It was for hangovers. Next to the pillbox was their wedding photo. In it, Alara was beaming, and he had his arm around her, his smile full of happiness. Ethan went into the bedroom. The closet door was ajar. More than half of Alara's clothes were gone. Her favorite beige cardigan was missing. Her favorite silk scarf was gone. On the nightstand lay a single ring, the one he had bought for their wedding, engraved with their initials. Now it lay there, abandoned like trash. Ethan picked it up and clenched it in his hand. A single thought consumed him. She was never coming back. He sank to the floor, his back against the bed. He was still holding the cold ribs, the sauce dripping onto the carpet, but he didn't care. There was no one left to tell him, "The house is a mess, go clean it." No one to make him hangover soup, no one to secretly pack his suitcase with stomach medicine, and no one to stubbornly believe in him, even when he betrayed that trust again and again. Suddenly, a soft drip sound came from the study. Ethan dragged himself into the study. The blue glow of the computer screen was jarring in the dark room. He clicked on the email. It was a video file. He pressed play and froze. On screen, Chloe was swinging her feet playfully. "Ethan, paint my nails too." Ethan watched the man on the screen, himself, smile and take the polish, clumsily applying it to her toes. But the next part made it hard to breathe. He saw himself lean down and kiss the top of her freshly painted foot. Slam. Ethan snapped the laptop shut, his chest heaving. He couldn't imagine how Alara must have felt seeing that. He shakily checked the email details. It was sent a week ago. He dialed the nail salon, his voice trembling. Why did Alara ask to see the security footage? Mr. Ethan. The receptionist recognized his voice. It was because Ms. Alara noticed her membership card balance was off. We followed procedure and showed her the transaction history, which included a charge for $2,800. $2,800. Ethan suddenly remembered Chloe insisting he tip the technician who had taught him how to paint nails. He had swiped the card without thinking, not realizing he was using Alara's account. The memory became crystal clear. That night when he came home, Alara had acted strangely, asking about the salon. "I got my nails done today, with the membership card you gave me." She had been looking down. "The technician said you brought a girl there last Thursday." Ethan remembered his heart skipping a beat, but he had remained calm on the surface. "That was our neighbor Mrs. Miller's daughter." Alara's hand had paused then. She looked up, a faint smile on her lips. "I see." Looking back, she already knew. She had given him one last chance, and he had lied. Ethan collapsed into the chair. The laptop screen went dark, reflecting his pale face. He frantically searched his drawers, finding the membership card Alara had left at the bottom. He remembered giving it to her. How her eyes had sparkled. "Will you come with me to get our nails done once a month?" He had just nodded dismissively, thinking that Chloe might want a card too. He grabbed his car keys and rushed out, speeding to the nail salon. "That day," he gasped, grabbing the manager's arm, after Alara saw the video. "What did she say?" The manager was frightened. "Ms. Alara, she just asked if you painted them yourself. We said yes, and she just smiled. Yes, it was." The manager hesitated, she just pulled up the corners of her mouth into a smile. Ethan let go, stumbling back. He finally understood. Alara had already divorced him in her heart back then. Everything that came after, his lies, his betrayal, forcing her to kneel for Chloe, causing her miscarriage, had only solidified her decision. She had known about his carefully constructed lies all along, and for the past week, he had repeatedly tried to convince her that he and Chloe were innocent. How much pain must Alara have been in? "By the way, sir," the manager added, "about that tip, we will be refunding it. We discovered that the employee conspired with the customer to solicit an exorbitant tip." An answer was already forming in Ethan's mind. Was that customer Chloe? Yes. A wave of rage washed over Ethan. It was all because of Chloe. She was the reason Alara had left him. Step by step, it had all been Chloe's scheme from the start. He clenched his fists and drove back to the hospital. Ethan kicked the door open. "Ethan." Chloe sat up, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Why are you here so late? Did you miss the baby?" Before she could finish, Ethan dragged her out of bed. She was pulled out of the room so fast she didn't even have time to put on her slippers. "What are you doing? Let me go," Chloe screamed, her nails digging bloody scratches into Ethan's arm. Ethan ignored her, his hand like an iron clamp on her wrist as he dragged her all the way to the transfusion room. The on-duty doctor jumped up. Mr. Ethan, draw her blood," Ethan said, forcing Chloe into a chair. "Now." Chloe's eyes widened in terror. "Are you crazy?" "Yes, I am," Ethan sneered, his eyes bloodshot. "Crazy enough to believe your lies. Crazy enough to hurt Alara for a piece of trash like you." A nurse hesitantly brought over a needle. Chloe shrank back. "No, I'll have a miscarriage." Ethan grabbed her shoulder. When Alara was giving blood, Did anyone ask her if she would have a miscarriage? The needle went in. Dark red blood flowed into the bag. Chloe gasped in pain, tears and snot covering her face. Stop, please, that's 200 cubic centimeters, the nurse said softly. Keep going. Ethan stared at the blood bag. Whatever you took from Alara, I want it all back. You will not have Alara's blood in your veins. Chloe's face turned pale, her lips trembling. Ethan, the baby really is yours. Are you going to kill your own child a second time? Ethan leaned in, grabbing her chin. Then let's get a paternity test. Chloe's eyes widened in shock. Now, immediately. Ethan roared at the doctor. Arrange a DNA test. If it's mine, I'll ensure you have a safe delivery. He leaned closer to her pale face. If it's not, everything you did to Alara will be returned to you, piece by piece. You can't do this. Chloe struggled hysterically. I love you so much. Love. Ethan laughed as if he'd heard a joke. You love my money, my status. He loosened his tie, all of which Alara gave me. The medical staff exchanged nervous glances but eventually brought over a gurney. As Chloe was being strapped down, she suddenly grabbed Ethan's sleeve. I admit it. The baby isn't yours. Please, spare my life. Ethan closed his eyes, his chest feeling like it had been hit with a sledgehammer. He should have known. Keep drawing, he said, shaking her hand off. A full 800 cubic centimeters, not a drop less. She could die, the doctor exclaimed. Alara gave 1,200. Ethan's voice was quiet, lost in memory. Then his tone turned vicious. I want her to know what it feels like to have her blood drained away. Chloe's cries faded. Ethan leaned against the wall, his vision blurring. In a daze, he saw Alara standing at the end of the hall, frail in her hospital gown. Alara, he stumbled after her, but grabbed at empty air. His knees hit the floor hard, the pain making him gasp. A nurse rushed to help him. Ethan, are you all right? Ethan waved her away and pushed himself up. In the transfusion room, Chloe had passed out, tear tracks still on her pale face. He felt an immense wave of exhaustion. That's enough, he said hoarsely. Send the blood to the blood bank. It was dawn when he left the hospital. Ethan sat in his car, watching the sky lighten in the east. His phone buzzed. A text from the person he hired to find Alara. Sir, Miss Alara is in Crestwood. Ethan shot up, his heart pounding. He shakily dialed his assistant. Book me the earliest flight to Crestwood. After hanging up, he looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror. Unshaven, bloodshot eyes. He looked like a madman. He was a madman. Mad enough to lose the person who loved him most for a liar. Alara stood before her family's villa. Her father, Julian, rushed out to meet her, pulling her into a tight hug. You're so thin. Her father's voice cracked. He patted her back gently, just as he had when she was a little girl. The familiar scent of her father made the tears she had held back finally fall. Dad, I was so blind. Nonsense. Her father held her face, wiping away her tears. That boy was never good enough for my daughter. You know, old Tom's son is coming back tomorrow. Didn't he used to chase after you all the time? Alara laughed through her tears. Dad, I just got divorced. Just think of it as seeing an old friend, her father said, guiding her inside. He called to the housekeeper. Mrs. Gable, bring out the stewed bird's nest soup, and tell the kitchen, no sugar in any dishes for the next month. Her bedroom was exactly as she had left it. The lavender bedsheets, the vanity by the window, even the little night light hadn't changed. She suddenly thought of the home she had shared with Ethan, the home she had personally decorated. She wondered what it looked like now. She sighed and touched her flat stomach. If Ethan hadn't cheated, and they had had their baby, they could have been so happy. Too bad Ethan had thrown it all away. A news notification lit up her phone. Evans' tech stock plummets. Founder Ethan Evans seen drunk in public. The accompanying photo showed an unshaven Ethan standing outside his company, his eyes vacant. She stared at the photo for 3 seconds, then locked her phone and tossed it aside. Miss, dinner is ready. The housekeeper knocked gently. The dining room was filled with the aroma of chicken and mushroom soup. Alara looked at the table full of her favorite light dishes, steamed sea bass, blanched shrimp, and bok choy in broth. Her father was awkwardly peeling shrimp for her, his hands a mess. Dad, I can do it. Don't you move. He piled the peeled shrimp into her bowl. When you were little, I could peel a whole plate for you. What's so different now? Alara picked up a shrimp and dipped it in soy sauce. The fresh, sweet flavor spread across her tongue. She suddenly remembered the sweet and sour ribs Ethan had made, the cloying sauce, and his back as he walked away without a second thought. Alara, her father asked, concerned, don't you like it? No, it's delicious. She quickly ate a few bites of rice. but her tears fell into the bowl. After dinner, her father insisted on a walk in the garden. The early summer breeze carried the scent of gardenias. Her father pointed into the distance. Remember, when you were 8, you pushed Tom's boy into that fountain because he said your dress looked like a burlap sack. Allara chuckled. And he retaliated by putting frogs in my backpack every day. Well, that boy has done very well for himself. He's a professor at Cambridge now, her father said, sneaking a glance at her. Want to see him tomorrow, just to get out of the house. Dad, I'm not pushing you to get married, he surrendered. I just thought it would be nice for you to talk to someone your own age. If you don't want to, your dad will take care of you forever. Under the lamplight, her father's gray hair was especially noticeable. Allara suddenly realized that the tall father of her memory was now shorter than her. Okay, I'll go, she said, taking his arm. But you have to promise to stop secretly adding bitter herbs to my soup. You cheeky girl, you could taste that. Their laughter startled the birds in the trees. Allara watched them fly away, thinking that maybe she should buy a new dress tomorrow. A lavender one would be nice, just like her favorite color when she was 18. Allara stood before the Thompsons' villa, her finger hovering over the doorbell for a few seconds before pressing it. The door opened almost immediately, revealing Mr. Thompson's kind face. Allara, he exclaimed, taking her hand, his eyes crinkling into a smile. We've been waiting for you. My boy here has been. Dad. Julian walked up quickly from behind, his ears turning red. Don't say things like that, Mr. Thompson laughed heartily, clapping his son on the shoulder. What's there to be shy about? You think I haven't seen those photos on your desk? He turned back to Allara. This silly boy talks about you every time he comes home. After you got married, he didn't even want to come back. Seeing Julian's embarrassment, Allara came to his rescue. Mr. Thompson, I'm back now. I'll be sure to visit often. Wonderful, wonderful. You young people chat, Mr. Thompson said, giving his son a meaningful look. I'll go check on the snacks. The living room fell silent. Julian cleared his throat. Want to take a walk? They built a new fountain in the garden behind the old house. The early summer sun filtered through the plane trees, casting dappled shadows on the stone path. They walked side by side, a comfortable distance between them. Allara felt a little awkward and was about to say something when Julian spoke first. Remember, he said, pointing to a gazebo, when you were 10, you insisted on playing princess there and made me be your guard. Allara chuckled. And you deliberately tripped and pulled me into a mud puddle. That was because you said you were going to marry the boy next door, Julian blurted out, then rubbed his nose in embarrassment. I was so silly back then. Yes, we were, Allara said, her tense shoulders relaxing as she looked at the familiar scenery. How many frogs did you put in my backpack after that? 27, Julian answered without hesitation, then realized he had let it slip. They both burst out laughing. As the laughter subsided, Allara winked mischievously. So Professor Thompson really has been thinking about me every day. She expected his usual witty comeback, but instead, Julian stopped and turned to face her. The sun shone from behind him, outlining his figure in gold. Yes, I've always liked you. Julian's voice was soft but clear. By the time I finished my PhD and came back, you were already married. I thought that was just how it was going to be for the rest of my life. Alara's smile froze. She quickly looked away. Julian, I just got back. I want to spend more time with my dad. I know, Julian interrupted gently. You don't have to answer me now. Just give me a chance to wait this time. Okay. The atmosphere grew a little heavy. Julian suddenly pointed into the distance. Look, your favorite cherry blossom tree is still there. We can come see it next spring. Allara breathed a sigh of relief and followed his lead. In the evening, Julian took her to a private restaurant. When the waiter served the dishes, she was surprised to see they were all nourishing soups and light fare. You need to take care of yourself during your recovery, Julian said, ladling some yam and pork rib soup into her bowl, his voice low. Otherwise, you'll have backaches later on. Alara's spoon clinked against the bowl. How did you know about that? The tips of Julian's ears turned red. I did a lot of research. I want to take good care of you. They tactfully changed the subject, talking about his adventures at Cambridge and catching up on old classmates. On the way back, Julian always walked on the side closer to the road, just as he did when he walked her home as a child. We're here, Allara said, stopping at her gate. Thanks for dinner. Julian smiled and took a few steps back, then waved like he used to as a teenager. See you tomorrow. The setting sun cast a warm orange glow on his back, the wind ruffling his hair. For a moment, Allara saw the 16-year-old Julian waiting for her after school. See you tomorrow, she heard herself say. Inside, Alara leaned against the door, her heart racing a little. In the living room, her father was reading the newspaper with his glasses on, pretending to be nonchalant. Did you have a good time? She said, taking off her coat. Then she remembered something. Dad, where's my lavender dress? Her father peered over his newspaper, a smile playing on his lips. In the closet, on the far left. I've always kept it for you. Alara stood in her walk-in closet, her fingers gently stroking the lavender dress. She took a deep breath, changed into it, and twirled in front of the mirror. It still fit perfectly. Well now, aren't we dressed up? Her father said, leaning against the doorframe with a cup of coffee, his eyes crinkling with amusement. I thought you said you weren't considering dating for another month. It's a class reunion. Alara's ears burned. She grabbed her bag and rushed out. Where's that white jacket, Mrs. Gable ironed last night? As she pushed open the main door, she nearly ran into a solid wall. Julian was standing on the steps below, wearing a white shirt under a lavender knit sweater, holding a cup of warm soy milk. They stared at each other, both stunned. You. Alara pointed at his clothes, then down at her own dress. Julian's ears turned a shade of red visible from space. It's a coincidence, I swear. He flusteredly handed her the soy milk. It's from your favorite place. I had them add an extra spoonful of sugar. Alara took the cup, the warmth seeping into her palm. She suddenly remembered how in college, whenever she had cramps, Julian would climb over the wall to buy her hot soy milk from this exact place. He had remembered all this time. The reunion was at their old favorite hot pot restaurant. When they opened the door to the private room, a chorus of cheers nearly blew the roof off. Whoa, did you two coordinate? The class president yelled, pointing at their matching outfits. Who won the graduation bet? I told you guys there was something between them, the top student said, slapping the table. Alara was pushed into the seat next to Julian, her face flushed. After a few drinks, the guys started spilling secrets. Julian, remember sophomore year? You stayed up all night making a birthday presentation for Alara, but the USB got a virus and you lost everything. You cried in the men's bathroom until dawn, and that time Alara had a fever, and someone skipped a midterm to climb into the girls' dorm to deliver medicine, and got a demerit for it. Alara turned to Julian in shock. All of this, why didn't I know? Julian placed a piece of cooked beef in her bowl. It's all ancient history, nothing worth mentioning. He then raised his glass to the rowdy group. All right, enough gossip. You'll all get an invitation to the wedding, I promise. Somehow, the topic shifted to marriage. When someone asked about Alara, the room fell silent. I'm divorced, Alara said calmly, putting down her chopsticks. He cheated, the other woman got pregnant, so I pulled my family's funding and left. That bastard. The class president slammed his fist on the table. What's his name? I'll get some guys to take care of him. Julian's knuckles turned white, his eyes burning with rage, but Alara just smiled. No need. My family pulling their investment is punishment enough. When have I, Alara, ever made a losing deal? She winked playfully, and for a moment, she was the same mischievous girl from college. Julian stared at her, then broke into a laugh. At the karaoke bar, the group pushed the two of them to the song selection screen. Someone queued up a classic love duet and thrust microphones into their hands. Though fate may have its twists and turns, Julian sang, turning to face Alara at the chorus. The colored lights danced on his eyelashes. Because of love, there is no room for sorrow. His gaze was so intense, Alara's heart skipped a beat. When the line, I can still be crazy for you anytime, came, she quickly put down the microphone. I need to use the restroom. On the balcony at the end of the hall, the night wind cooled her flushed cheeks. Alara took out her phone. The lock screen was still her wedding photo with Ethan. She pressed and held the image, then decisively hit delete. Hiding out here. Julian's voice came from behind. He handed her a glass of warm water. They sent me to find you. They didn't mean to tease you. Alara took the glass and suddenly asked, why didn't you ever tell me? Julian leaned against the railing. I wanted you to like me for me, not because of the things I did for you. From a distance came the sounds of their classmates' laughter and off-key singing. The night wind carried the scent of acacia blossoms. Alara suddenly felt that the heart-wrenching past wasn't so hard to let go of after all. Back home, Alara sat on her bedroom carpet, a college photo album open on her lap. The warm lamplight cast a nostalgic glow on the pictures. Her fingers traced the yellowed edges. This one is. She pulled out a group photo from their graduation trip and froze. In the photo, she was in the front row, making a peace sign, but Julian, in the back row, wasn't looking at the camera. His head was slightly turned, his gaze cutting across the crowd. resting gently on her. She quickly flipped through the other photos. At the sports meet, when she collapsed after running the 3,000-meter race, a photo captured the moment Julian handed her water. The worry in his eyes was almost tangible. At the debate team's victory party, she was laughing and raising her glass, while Julian stood in a corner with a camera, a soft smile on his face as he watched her. So, I was the one who was oblivious. Alara's throat tightened, her fingertips trembling. Tucked into the last page of the album was an unopened letter. The envelope read, "To Alara," in Julian's neat handwriting. Her phone rang, an unfamiliar number from Ethan's city. She answered hesitantly. "Hello." There was only faint static on the other end, and the sound of suppressed breathing. "Hello," she asked again, a sense of realization dawning on her. She unconsciously clenched the hem of her pajamas. After 3 seconds of silence, the call was disconnected. Alara stared at her phone. That city, filled with sweet and painful memories, where she and Ethan had lived together. Had he finally realized he had signed divorce papers? Or had he hit rock bottom after his company went bankrupt? Lost in thought, Alara heard a soft tap from outside her window. She pulled back the curtains. Julian was standing below, looking up. Seeing her, he smiled and held up a small pebble, mouthing the words, "Shopping tomorrow." The night wind brushed against her warm cheeks. Alara nodded, then remembered something. She grabbed a sticky note from her desk, scribbled a few words, and tossed it down. The note fluttered into Julian's hand. On it was a smiley face and the word, "Okay, Alara." Her father's voice came from outside her door. "Don't leave the window open so late. You'll catch a cold." When he opened the door and saw his daughter's flushed face and the figure below, he raised an eyebrow. Well, is young Thompson trying to be Romeo now, Dad?" Alara scrambled to close the window, pushing her chuckling father out of the room. "Go to bed." Lying in bed, she realized she had been smiling the whole time. The unopened letter in her hand remained unopened. Crickets chirped outside. That night, she dreamed of the summer she was 16. The sound of cicadas on the basketball court was deafening. She sat under a tree, memorizing vocabulary, and every time she looked up, her eyes would meet a gaze from the court. The boy in the white shirt would quickly look away, forgetting the can of soda in his hand was tilted, spilling all over the ground. This time, she noticed him, and she laughed. Alara was in a department store with Julian, browsing new dresses, when a painfully familiar voice came from behind. "Alara, is that really you?" Her back went rigid, her fingers tightening on the hanger. Julian sensed her change immediately and followed her gaze. Ethan stood 10 feet away, unshaven but neatly dressed. His eyes shone with a joyful light as he strode forward, reaching for her wrist. "I finally found you." Julian reacted instantly, pulling Alara behind him, his tall frame a wall between them. "Sir, please have some self-respect." Ethan's expression twisted. "Who is he?" He tried to get around Julian to reach Alara. "Alara, we need to talk. You have no right to question my affairs," Alara said, stepping out from behind Julian. Her voice was cold, devoid of emotion. "How do I not have the right?" Ethan's voice trembled. "I'm your husband. We were married for 5 years. Did you move on that easily?" Under the bright mall lights, Alara suddenly smiled. It was the same smile she had worn the day she handed him the divorce papers. "Move on." She tilted her head. "Your memory is failing you, Mr. Evans. Who was it that cheated during our marriage? Who forced his pregnant wife to give blood to his mistress?" She took a step forward. "Do I need to remind you how disgusting it was when you said you loved me with the same mouth that had kissed another woman's foot?" Ethan's face went white. He staggered back. I know I was wrong. Chloe's baby wasn't even mine. I already." "So," Alara cut him off, "can that bring my baby back? Can we go back?" A small crowd had started to gather. Julian silently took her trembling hand, his warm palm calming her slightly. Suddenly, Ethan fell to his knees. The polished mall floor reflected his pathetic figure. He clutched the hem of Alara's dress, his voice choked with sobs. "Please, give me one more chance. I'll give up everything." Alara looked down at the man she had once loved so deeply, the veins on his forehead, his trembling shoulders, the tears in his eyes. All of it was so foreign. "Ethan," she said, slowly pulling her dress from his grasp, "the bankruptcy of your company is the karma you deserve. As for us," she turned and walked away with Julian. "It was over the moment you chose Chloe." Ethan collapsed on the floor, watching them leave. Julian whispered something in Alara's ear. She nodded gently and leaned her head on his shoulder. The intimate gesture was like a knife twisting in Ethan's heart. Outside the mall, the sun was shining. Julian suddenly stopped. "Want some ice cream? You always used to eat sweets when you were upset." Alara looked at his concerned eyes, then stood on her tiptoes and gave him a soft kiss on the cheek. I'm in a very good mood right now. Seeing Julian's face instantly flush, she added with a smile, but I'll still have the ice cream. The kneeling figure behind them grew smaller and smaller, until it was gone. Alara sat on the bay window in her bedroom, scrolling irritably through her phone. From downstairs came Ethan's hoarse shouts. Alara, please, just give me 5 minutes. She bit her lip and texted Julian. He's here again. He's been yelling at the gate for half an hour. It's so annoying. Julian replied instantly. Should I come over? Before she could answer, she heard the front door slam open. Alara ran to the window. Her father was standing on the steps, his usually gentle face dark with rage. Ethan, her father's voice boomed. My daughter weighed 120 pounds when she married you. She came back weighing 105. He grabbed Ethan by the collar. What did you promise me at the wedding? Huh? Ethan stumbled but stubbornly tilted his head up. Dad. No, Mr. Vance. Please let me see Alara. The rule in our family, her father sneered, is that a cheating man who wants to enter this house has to take 99 lashes. Can you handle that? I can. Ethan knelt without hesitation. I'll take as many as you want. Alara frowned as the butler and security dragged Ethan into the living room. She tried to ignore it, but the dull thud of the whip against flesh made her uneasy. When she reached the turn of the stairs, she saw Ethan being held down on the coffee table. His back was already a bloody mess, but he was still stubbornly calling her name. Alara. Ethan's dull eyes lit up when he saw her. I knew you still cared about me. Alara walked straight to her father and took his arm. Dad, it's not worth getting angry over someone like him. She turned to the guards. Keep going. Don't stop. The sound of the whip slicing through the air started again. Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief, a grunt of pain escaping him. Still not changing your mind? Her father asked coldly. No. Ethan gritted his teeth. I deserve this. Alara glanced at his pale face, then smiled and kissed her father's cheek. Julian and I are going boating. Don't wait up for me for dinner. She hummed a tune as she walked to the door. Ethan's hoarse voice called after her. Alara, you said you'd be with me forever. Was it all a lie? Alara paused for a second. You must be mistaken, Mr. Evans, she said without turning back as she opened the door. You were the one who cheated. The moment the door closed, Ethan finally passed out. In his last moment of consciousness, he saw the Alara from 5 years ago, standing at the courthouse, blushing as she said, From now on, I'll take care of everything for you. Now, she wouldn't even spare him a single glance. The lake glittered. Julian rowed the boat, looking at her with concern. Are you really okay? Alara dipped her feet into the cool water and suddenly smiled. Look over there. She pointed to the blooming wild roses on the bank. When I was little, I hated their thorns. Now I realize, a rose without thorns isn't a rose at all. Julian paused, then smiled in understanding. He reached out and gently brushed a petal from her hair, his touch as delicate as if he were handling a priceless treasure. Alara thought of Ethan, of that man and those memories. They would never again occupy a place in her heart. Ethan slowly opened his eyes to the smell of disinfectant. The sharp, stinging pain in his back made him gasp. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting patterns on his bed. He was still lost in the dream he just had. In the dream, he hadn't betrayed Alara. They were living happily together with a lovely pair of twins. Alara's gentle smile was so real he could almost smell the jasmine in her hair. The smile on his lips faded as reality crashed down. The empty hospital room was filled only with the rhythmic beeping of machines. There was no cozy home, and no wife to tuck him in. Ethan scoffed at himself. The movement sent a fresh wave of pain through his back, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the regret consuming his heart. He remembered Alara's cold eyes, her final words that she would never forgive him. It was all his own doing. He had pushed away the person who loved him most. The door opened. Ethan looked up, his heart stopping when he saw the familiar figure. Alara. His voice trembled, his fingers gripping the bedsheet. Alara stood at the door in a sleek tracksuit, holding a folder. Her gaze rested on him for a moment, devoid of any emotion. Good. You're not dead, she said, walking in and placing the folder on the nightstand. This is a liability waiver. Sign it to certify that you accepted the punishment voluntarily. The light in Ethan's eyes dimmed. He drank in the sight of her, noticing her complexion was much better than when they were divorced. The sadness in her brow was gone. Is that all you have to say to me? He asked, his throat painfully dry. Alara smoothed her clothes, not even bothering to look at him. Rest well, Mr. Evans. As she turned to leave, Ethan struggled to sit up, ignoring the searing pain as his wounds reopened. I won't give up. I'll win you back. just like I did the first time. Alara didn't even pause. She walked straight to the door. As her hand touched the doorknob, Ethan called out again, Alara, this time. She turned. The sun backlit her figure, obscuring her expression. Ethan. Her voice was soft but every word was clear. Some mistakes can't be fixed with an apology. The soft click of the door closing was like a hammer blow to Ethan's heart. He collapsed back onto the bed, the bandages on his back soaked with fresh blood, but the pain was nothing compared to his regret. The sun outside was bright, but to Ethan, it was blinding. He curled into a ball, burying his face in his pillow, his muffled sobs echoing in the empty room. As tears soaked the pillow, Ethan thought of his beautiful dream, of Alara's gentle smile, of their lovely children. That should have been his life, a life he had destroyed with his own hands. Alara, he murmured to the empty room, I'm so sorry, please come back. But this time, there was no one to gently reply. I forgive you. Alara snuggled contentedly in Julian's arms, playfully twisting a button on his shirt. Sunlight streamed through the window. Julian was peeling grapes for her, his long fingers deftly revealing the translucent fruit, which he placed in a bowl. Julian, I want macarons from that shop on the east side, she said playfully. Julian immediately put down the grapes and picked up his phone. I'll have someone buy them now. Alara closed her eyes in satisfaction. It felt so good to be cherished. She was about to lean in and kiss him when a piercing shout came from outside. Alara, I will show you my determination. Ethan was standing outside the gate, still in his hospital gown. The wounds on his back made him stand a little crooked, but his eyes were fiercely determined. Alara frowned in annoyance. He's here again. Julian patted her hand reassuringly. I'll handle it. Outside the gate, the two men faced off. Ethan stared at Julian. You have no right to stop me. Julian chuckled, slowly rolling up his sleeves. Mr. Evans, the bruise on Alara's back from when you pushed her down the stairs, the marks on her wrist from where you grabbed her, I remember every single one. His eyes turned cold. Now, get lost. I'm her husband. Ex-husband, Julian corrected, a knowing smile on his face. Since you're so confident, why don't we go shopping? At the mall. Alara held Julian's arm, deliberately ignoring Ethan trailing behind them. She stopped at a luxury boutique, her gaze lingering on a limited edition handbag in the window. We'll take it, Julian said, already handing over his black card. Ethan stood nearby, his nails digging into his palms. The price of that bag was equivalent to his entire life savings now. Aren't you going to make a gesture, Mr. Evans? Julian raised an eyebrow. I hear you used to buy bags for Ms. Chloe all the time. Hearing this, a sarcastic smile touched Alara's lips. Ethan's face went pale. He stiffly walked over. Alara, if you like it, I'll buy it. No need, she interrupted breezily. Julian already bought it. For the rest of the trip, Julian was relentless. Every piece of jewelry Alara glanced at, every dress she tried on, even a perfume she idly picked up, he bought them all. Sales associates followed them eagerly, their hands full of shopping bags. In the elevator, Julian suddenly turned to Ethan. How about this, Mr. Evans? If you can buy any single bag from that store right now, I will immediately apologize to you. Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed. The little money he had left after his bankruptcy couldn't even afford a wallet, let alone a six-figure handbag. The curious stares of the sales staff felt like daggers. The words caught in his throat. Julian sneered, wrapping an arm around Alara's waist as they stepped out of the elevator. Don't make promises you can't keep. Alara's lifestyle is one you can no longer afford, but I can. Behind them, they heard the dull thud of Ethan's fist hitting the wall. Alara walked on without looking back, but she stopped at the corner. What's wrong? Julian asked, concerned. She shook her head and buried her face in his chest. I just suddenly realized, how could I have ever loved someone like that? Julian gently stroked her hair. You have me to love you now. Ethan stood a short distance away, a complete outsider. He watched the happy smile on Alara's face and clenched his fists. The life you want. Alara, I can give it to you too. Ethan stood before the Vance family villa, clutching the expensive limited edition handbag. The cuffs of his suit were frayed, his shoes had lost their shine, but his eyes were fiercely determined. Alara, he called out as she emerged. Look, the bag you liked. I bought it. Alara was wearing a chic beige suit, her hair casually tied up, looking effortlessly elegant. She glanced nonchalantly at the bag in his hand, a faint smile playing on her lips. Oh, she took the bag, and as Ethan watched with hopeful eyes, she let go. The bag fell to the ground with a soft thud. Alara lifted her foot, her stiletto heel mercilessly grinding into the leather. You Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. What I liked yesterday, I don't like today, Alara said dismissively, her expression as cold as if she were looking at a stranger. Just like how I used to like you. And now the sight of you just makes me sick. Ethan's face went deathly pale. The bag he had spent everything on was nothing more than disposable trash in her eyes. Is there really no chance for us? Ethan's voice trembled. I'll work hard to give you the life you want. Work hard. Alara sounded as if she'd heard a joke. The last time you succeeded, whose family's capital and connections did you rely on? She looked him up and down. What? Have you gotten addicted to being a kept man? Ethan's face flushed, but his fingers brushed against something in his pocket. After a moment of silence, he pulled out a velvet box. Inside was the wedding ring Alara had taken off. Do you remember? Ethan's voice was choked. On our wedding day, you promised you would never take this off. Alara's expression flickered for a second but quickly returned to ice. She snatched the ring and, as Ethan watched expectantly, walked over to the storm drain at the edge of the driveway. Don't. Ethan lunged forward to stop her, but it was too late. The ring traced an arc through the air and fell into the drain with a soft clink. Now, disappear from my life forever, Alara said, turning back to the house, her figure resolute. Ethan knelt by the storm drain, his hand reaching futilely into the grate. Rain began to fall, soaking his suit and washing away his last shred of hope. Alara, I love you, he murmured to the closed door, but his words were met with silence. Rain and tears streamed down his face. He finally understood. Some mistakes, once made, could never be undone. The girl whose eyes once held only him now wouldn't even spare him a glance. The final soft clink of the ring seemed to be the period at the end of their 5-year marriage. Alara was in the window seat, with Julian hugging her from behind, his chin resting gently on her head. What are you thinking about? He asked, his warm breath tickling her ear. Alara leaned back into his embrace, her lips curving into a smile. About that time we met. And you put a frog in my backpack. Julian chuckled, the vibration in his chest rumbling against her back. And do you know that was because I had nightmares for 3 days after you pushed me into the fountain? Happy chatter drifted up from downstairs. Alara's father and Julian's father were playing chess in the garden. Julian's mother and the Vance family chef were discussing the wedding menu. Since she and Julian had made their relationship official, the two families gathered almost every week. Alara, try this, Julian's mother said, carrying over a plate of pastries. I modified the osmanthus cake recipe to your taste. Half the sugar. Alara took a bite, the light, sweet fragrance blooming on her tongue. It's delicious. Thank you, Auntie. Still calling her Auntie, Julian's father teased from the garden. Isn't it time for a change? Julian's ears turned red. Alara laughed and hid in his arms. The sun was perfect. The breeze was gentle. And even the air tasted sweet. By the way, Julian said, giving her a mysterious wink, I want to show you something. He led her to the study and took a yellowed envelope from a drawer. Alara recognized it as the one she had found in her college photo album but never opened. You can read it now, Julian said, watching her expression nervously. On the page was a young Julian's neat handwriting. Alara, you talked to that senior again today. I know I shouldn't be so petty, but I really like you. If you like me even a little bit, please wear that purple hair ribbon tomorrow. Okay. Alara's eyes welled up. So that day, I waited at the school gate all day, Julian said, scratching his head in embarrassment. But you wore a ponytail. They looked at each other and smiled. Time seemed to rewind to that summer when they were 17, on the buzzing basketball court. A girl didn't know that a boy's ardent gaze was always following her. Is it too late to make up for it now? Alara pulled a lavender ribbon from her pocket, the exact one from back then. Julian stared, then smiled and took it, carefully tying it in her hair. Sunlight streamed through the window, their shadows dancing on the floor. A cheer erupted from downstairs. Julian's father had won the chess game and was triumphantly showing off to her father. The two mothers were looking through old photos, laughing nostalgically. For the wedding next month, I want it to be by the fountain, Alara said suddenly. Julian smiled knowingly. The one I fell into. She said, tilting her head up to kiss his chin. So everyone knows that I was the one who won in the end. As evening fell, the two families sat around a long table in the garden. The setting sun painted everyone's smiling faces in gold. Looking at the happy scene, Alara was suddenly reminded of Ethan kneeling by the storm drain that afternoon, searching for the ring. What's wrong? Julian noticed her distraction. Alara shook her head and intertwined their fingers. It's just, this is so nice. Yes, it was so nice. No suspicion, no betrayal, only the unconditional blessing of two families. Julian would remember she didn't like sweet food. He would treasure an unsent love letter for over a decade. He would learn to make all kinds of nourishing soups for her. Late at night, Alara leaned on Julian's shoulder, watching the stars. He was humming softly, that same love duet. This time, she wouldn't be leaving halfway through. Alara, Julian said, looking at her seriously, I will make you happier every day than the day before. Alara smiled and kissed him. On her wedding day, Alara, in a pure white gown, walked down the aisle on her father's arm, a gentle smile on her lips. Her father's eyes were red, his hand trembling slightly as he held his daughter's. He took a deep breath and whispered, Alara, my greatest wish in life is to see you happy. Alara's nose tingled. She squeezed his hand. Dad, I am very happy now. He nodded, fighting back tears, and led her step by step towards Julian, who was waiting at the end of the aisle. Julian stood in a perfectly tailored black suit, his gaze burning with undisguised love. When Alara finally reached him, his Adam's apple bobbed. Alara, he said, his voice hoarse, I've waited for this day for so long. The officiant smiled and prompted them for their vows. Julian took a deep breath and pulled out the old, unsent love letter from his pocket. The Julian who wrote this letter. His hands were shaking so much he could barely write straight. He said, his voice trembling as he read, Alara, if you like me even a little bit, please wear that purple hair ribbon tomorrow. The guests chuckled warmly, but tears streamed down Alara's face. But you didn't wear it that day, Julian said, his own eyes red, but he smiled and wiped away her tears. Later, I thought, it's okay, I can wait. I can wait for you to break up with other people, wait for you to graduate, wait for you to finally see me. He took a shuddering breath, his voice choked. Alara, thank you for choosing me in the end. Alara couldn't hold back any longer and threw herself into his arms. The church erupted in applause. Her father secretly wiped away a tear. Julian's mother was already crying openly. The two sets of parents exchanged a smile, their eyes full of joy. The entire church was filled with happiness, except for one lone, desolate figure in a corner. Ethan stood in the shadows of the last pew, his suit wrinkled, his face pale. He watched the couple embrace on the altar, his heart squeezed by an invisible hand. He remembered having a moment like this once. Alara in her wedding dress, walking towards him, her eyes full of hope and love, but he had destroyed that happiness with his own hands. Now, he was witnessing what she looked like when she was truly happy, not a forced smile, not quiet endurance, but being loved, cherished, and treasured without reservation. The groom may now kiss the bride, the officiant announced. Julian cupped Alara's face and kissed her gently. The church burst into cheers as confetti and flower petals rained down. Ethan clenched his fists, his nails digging so deep into his palms he should have felt pain, but he felt nothing. He should have been the one standing there. He should have been the one making her happy. But now, he didn't even have the right to go up and say, congratulations. After the wedding, as the guests began to leave, Ethan remained rooted to his spot until the church was empty. He slowly walked to the altar, looked at the scattered petals on the floor, bent down, and picked one up, closing it in his palm. Alara, I wish you happiness, he whispered, his voice raw. The news of Alara's pregnancy came on a sunny afternoon. Julian held the lab report, his fingers trembling, his usually steady voice uncharacteristically shaky. Is this real? The doctor smiled and nodded. Congratulations, she's 6 weeks along. Julian spun around, swept Alara into his arms, and spun her around before suddenly remembering and gently setting her down. He frantically placed a hand on her still, flat stomach. Did I hurt the baby? Was I too rough? Alara laughed and pinched his tense cheek. It's not that fragile. But Julian was a nervous wreck. On the drive home, he slowed to 25 miles per hour, and when he approached a speed bump, he looked like he wanted to get out and level the road. Once home, he immediately started making lists. Pregnancy nutrition, check. Up schedules, do's and don'ts for expectant mothers. Julian, Alara said, gently taking his pen. Calm down. He looked up, his eyes surprisingly red. Alara, I'm scared. She was taken aback. I'm scared you'll be uncomfortable. Scared you'll be in pain, he said, his voice low as he gently touched her stomach. And I'm scared I won't do a good enough job. Alara's heart softened. She cupped his face. You're going to be a wonderful father. The pregnancy was harder than she imagined. For the first 3 months, she was sick constantly. Julian made her different light meals every day. When she couldn't eat, he would coax her, spoonful by spoonful. At night, when she couldn't sleep, he would rub her back all night, then get up the next day with dark circles under his eyes to continue taking care of her. In the 4th month, She had a sudden craving for the spicy and sour noodles from a shop near their old university. Julian drove across the city, only to find the shop had closed down years ago. He managed to track down the original owner and begged him to fire up his stove one more time, just to make her an authentic bowl. "Are you silly?" Alara said, laughing as she ate. Though tears fell into her bowl, Julian gently wiped them away. "As long as you're happy." The day she went into labor, Julian stood outside the delivery room for 8 straight hours. Her father paced back and forth, finally saying, "Son, sit down and rest." Julian shook his head, his eyes glued to the door. Every time he heard Alara cry out in pain from inside, his face grew a shade paler. When the baby's cry finally rang out, his legs gave out, and he nearly fell to his knees. A nurse came out with a swaddled bundle. "Congratulations. It's a healthy boy." But Julian rushed straight past her to the bed. Alara was drenched in sweat, her face pale. He took her hand, his own trembling, and his tears fell onto her skin. "Alara, we are never doing this again." She smiled weakly. "Silly, go look at the baby." The tiny infant was placed in her arms, his wrinkled face like a little red monkey. Julian carefully touched his son's fingers. His fingers are so small. The month after the birth was a chaotic blur. Julian took an extended leave from work to take care of them both around the clock, changing diapers, making formula, burping the baby. He learned so quickly that even the maternity nurse praised him. "I've never seen such a meticulous father." When the baby cried at night, he was always the first one up. "I've got him. You sleep." Often, in a sleepy haze, Alara would see his silhouette by the window, gently rocking their son, the moonlight softly enveloping them both. At the 1-month celebration, the grandparents all vied to hold the baby. The little one wore a red outfit, his dark eyes curiously taking in the world. "Have you picked a name?" Julian's father asked. Julian wrapped an arm around Alara's waist and smiled. "Leo." As night fell, Alara leaned on Julian's shoulder, watching their little one sleep peacefully in his crib. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. She tilted her head up and kissed his chin. "Happier than I ever imagined." Outside, the stars shone softly. Julian leaned down and captured her lips. In the crib, little Leo smacked his lips, dreaming a sweet dream. The last time Ethan saw Alara was on the financial news. On the screen, she was dressed in a sharp white suit, attending a business forum as the new CEO of her family's corporation. The camera panned to the audience, where Julian sat holding their 3-year-old son, who was waving a small banner with his mother's picture on it. Ethan turned off the TV, and the small apartment fell silent. On the table lay his daily pills, stomach medicine, antidepressants, sleeping pills. The doctor said his stomach ulcer was severe and he had to stop drinking. But the collection of empty bottles under the coffee table kept growing. Ping. A notification on his phone. "Chloe has been sentenced to 7 years for fraud. She just wrote you a letter from prison." Ethan deleted the message without a second thought. 5 years ago, Chloe had lied that her child was his. It was later proven to belong to one of her other benefactors. He sneered. This was karma. As the alcohol took hold, he saw a vision of a 22-year-old Alara standing at the courthouse, blushing as she said, "Ethan, I'll be very good to you." Now, he was curled up on a worn-out sofa, the divorce agreement locked in his nightstand. Ethan swallowed the sleeping pills. As darkness enveloped him, his last thought was, if he could do it all over again, he would have avoided the road where he met Chloe that night. Then, maybe, he would have been the one who was happy.